Howdy folks. I love accents. And the accent that I am the most familiar with is definitely the Dutch accent. My mom is Dutch and my dad is American, but my mom has 5 siblings and my dad has none. So the vast majority of my family is Dutch. What really impresses me is the number of languages that Dutch people speak. They are amazing at this. It's seriously their favorite national pastime, right after riding bicycles, is speaking foreign languages. They all speak English. Every single Dutch person speaks English. They're not all fluent at English, but everyone speaks it a little bit. They have to take it in school. And this is sometimes a little bit embarrassing for me, because despite being half Dutch, I don't speak Dutch. I speak it a little bit. I'm not that good at it. And this is something that I will never, ever, ever forgive my mother for. Not speaking Dutch to me when I was a baby, so that I would be naturally bilingual. I mean, how awesome is that? I could have been natively bilingual in English and Dutch and just able to speak to my whole family. No trouble, but no. I asked her why later, and she said she just never thought about it. But anyway, that's a different story. The point is that when I'm with my Dutch relatives, or pretty much any Dutch person, their English is always better than my Dutch. So we always end up speaking English, and I feel bad about it. But in this video, I want to talk about accents. I love the Dutch accent. I think it sounds beautiful, and it's really distinctive. Whenever I hear someone being interviewed on the radio or on television, before they tell me who they are or what their name is or where they're from, I can tell if they're Dutch. It just has a certain sound to it. It's really different from the German accent, from the Danish accent, from any other accent. I think I'm going to make 2 or 3 videos about this, because if I put it all into one, I think it would be way too long. So today I'm just going to focus on the consonants. And I'm going to do it in both directions. The way Dutch people say English consonants and the way American people say Dutch consonants. I'll start with the second one. Of all the consonants in Dutch, by far the most difficult one for Americans to say is ge, the sound, that gargly noise in the back of the throat. As you all know, there's nothing like that in English. We have no sound like that. I've been practicing it since I was a kid, and usually it comes out okay. When I'm speaking Dutch, I can usually say words like goed or gezellig or geboren, and it comes out without my having to think about it too much. Another Dutch consonant that Americans have trouble with is the R. And the problem here is a little bit more subtle than with the ge, because we have a sound for R. It just happens to be really different than the Dutch sound for R. In American English, the R, is a liquid. So your tongue doesn't touch anything in your mouth. It doesn't touch your teeth, it doesn't touch the roof of your mouth, you just kind of hold it in the middle of your mouth, kind of in the air. And Americans don't think about this when we talk. We just say river, rolling, rumble, and it just happens. In Dutch, the R is a flap, which means your tongue hits the roof of your mouth right behind your teeth. So you say rut, road, rimpel. And sometimes it gets rolled a little bit. When Dutch people really want to emphasize a word with an R in it, they roll the R. As far as I can tell. This is what I've observed. I don't know if that's a rule, but it seems like people go when they're really excited about things. I get the feeling, and the Dutch speakers out there can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that when Americans speak Dutch with an American R, that it sounds horrible, and it sounds really, really American to use the American R. The r sound instead of the r. My dad does it. He lived in Holland for a couple years, which is how he met my mom. And he took some courses in Dutch and learned it a little bit. And he still remembers some of it. He still knows a bunch of words. And he's very enthusiastic about it. He likes to speak Dutch as much as he can. But his accent is crazy. It's so American. And he has a strong Tennessee accent to begin with. And it just carries through right into his Dutch. And it's kind of funny to listen to. Yes. But the point is that he always says his R is the American way. And I think it's one of the most American things about his accent, if that makes sense. Probably the hardest sound for me to make when it comes to Dutch consonants is the combination of the ge and the sound. So in a word like grappig, you have to go from the back of your mouth and to the front of your mouth with the and you have to go grappig. And that's usually okay. It gets even worse though when you put an S in front of it. So you have to go S, then and I don't know how Dutch people do that so fast. When I say a word like schreeuw, it takes me almost as long to say the consonant as it does to say the whole word. I have to say each of them separately. So I say schreeuw, or schravenpolder, and that combination at the beginning is really, really difficult. Most of the Dutch consonants I think aren't that difficult for Americans. Probably the next toughest one is going to be the en at the end of words that kind of gets dropped. You kind of swallow it, like in morgen or dansen or kregen. Sometimes I get that right, and sometimes I completely mess up. Sometimes I'll say morgen and I'll really pronounce it, and sometimes I'll really drop it and say morgen. And I know both of those are kind of wrong. Okay, now for the other side of it. English consonants that Dutch people have difficulty pronouncing. We've already talked about the R's, and it's kind of the reverse problem. I think the liquid R is hard for Dutch people to say. Although I actually don't mind when they use the flap R. It's perfectly understandable, and I think it sounds a lot prettier than the American R. So that's not actually a problem. It actually makes you sound really cool if you do that wrong. So I wouldn't worry too much about that if you're Dutch. But definitely the giant bugaboo of the Dutch accent in English is the TH sound. And apparently this is a really crazy sound. It's really easy for me because it's my native language to go this thing through thought. But most languages in the world do not have a TH sound. It's one of those sounds like that's really rare and really hard to make and not that common. So lots of foreign language speakers have trouble with TH. Dutch people typically replace TH with a D sound, like this and that. Sometimes with a Z, like biz. But usually very understandable. It kind of fits in with the whole accent. And my mom still does this, even after living in America for 30 years. And she speaks great English. She speaks better English than 95% of Americans. Maybe 99%. She's really good at English. But sometimes she does miss the TH. Sometimes she gets it, and sometimes she misses it. I usually don't even hear it. So it's hard for me to say. I don't hear her accent when she speaks most of the time. But she does occasionally say whiz for with, or weather for weather, and that sort of thing. Well, I was actually thinking about this today as I was watching YouTube. If you guys know Esme Denter, she is a Dutch girl who has become famous on YouTube for her singing. And today or yesterday, she put out a holiday video just saying, hey everybody, happy holidays. And her accent is really interesting. Don't go watch Esme's videos if you want an idea what a typical Dutch accent sounds like, because hers does not sound Dutch at all. It really doesn't. I was really surprised when I heard her speak for the first time, knowing that she was Dutch, because she doesn't have that distinctive Dutch accent. It's kind of hard to describe, but she speaks the way that hip-hop singers sing. Which makes sense, I guess, because that's the kind of music that she usually sings, so if you listen to that a lot, maybe you'll learn to speak that way. But occasionally you can hear twinges of Dutchness coming into her hip-hop accent. Today in her holiday video, I was watching it, and she sounded totally American, totally urban, and then she said the word this as dis. And it was like, yes, you are so Dutch! And I don't know. I'm a dork for accents, and I really love the Dutch accent. I think it sounds beautiful. I actually prefer the Dutch accent to the American accent when speaking English. I think the way Americans speak English sounds really lazy and really sloppy, but when you hear a Dutch person speak English, or most Europeans actually speak English, they're very crisp and very sharp and very clean about it, and I love that. On the consonants in Dutch and American, I definitely love the Dutch speakers out there. I know there are quite a few Dutch people who watch my videos, so let me know if you think I'm right or wrong about any of this. If you can say the TH sound, or if you've heard kind of the same mistakes that I talked about from Americans trying to speak Dutch. If you have heard any Americans try to speak Dutch, there aren't that many of us. Dag jongens.